is the finale. Just because I love this space because it's almost like the entire scene captured in four walls. Pretty much every artist who's ever painted anything in Buenos Aires has a piece somewhere on this wall. And again, building on the idea that instead of just painting over people, instead of painting over people, you're supposed to integrate pieces. So on this side you've got probably about 7 different pieces that have all been painted at different times by different artists, but kind of the spirit is that instead of just painting over, you incorporate, you paint around. The charcoal face is done by a Cuban artist called Carlos Rodez. This piece of strange monster art with many tongues and many nipples turned up about 6 months later and was put delicately over the top of it. Cheech and Chong then got stenciled either side and spray painted something on the guy's face. Someone else drew a hat on him. Brazilian artist put pichação, which is this very specific form of Sao Paulo graffiti, which has very angular, very thin, tall letters, and is very representative of kind of the graffiti and sort of gang culture out there. Underneath, the family of bears were sort of stenciled there. There's some fairly abstract, strange things going on. There's about like maybe 10, 12 different artists' work who are all just finding a space within that area to put their art. Rather than just painting over, you incorporate, you work around it, you think about how to interact with other people's pieces. The same thing is happening over there. There's this kind of like orderly chaos where you've got an enormous amount of work from a number of artists, but they're all being quite thoughtful about how they can position their art so as not to go over anyone in particular. Pon, the female artist we saw, has painted over the back of a kind of 3D cube background by Nurse. Someone else has stenciled this crown of thorns and put it on top of her hat. This head was put on a body that was already there. Someone actually had a stencil of a head, but didn't want to go over anything particular, so he just put it on the head at the front of somebody else's body. There's this Mexican wrestling mask coming out of the top of a guy's head. The Mexican wrestling mask was there first. The empty guy's head came about sort of a year and a half later, done by a different artist who stencils these kind of empty heads and then has various images coming out of it that people around the city. It's all quite carefully constructed to give the idea of like one big collaborative piece, even though the artists are collaborating at like 6 months apart sometimes and may not even know each other, but the idea is to kind of like capture the feeling of the streets, capture the collaborative spirit that people work in. Some really good stencil pieces up here. This one in particular though, it was by a stencil who did that, the million layered stencil piece we saw on the front of that restaurant wall. He did that because he did this very complex, beautiful collaboration with working with 3 other artists that covered like, I don't know, it was sort of about like a 12 metre by 3 metre wall. But in doing so, he went over some tags from the B2 crew, who specialise in writing B2. And they were very upset that someone would dare go over their B2s, so they came back en masse, having had this huge, like complicated, beautiful piece put over their B2s. They came back and completely destroyed it and wrote the most obnoxiously large B2 they possibly could. And they wrote respect underneath it to remind people that it's disrespectful to paint over B2s. So Santi cut out a picture of himself as a painter, whitewashed out half of their B2, and then just stood there grinning at him. So I just love the idea, like, you paint over me, I'll paint over you, you paint over me. I'm going to paint over you with a picture of me as a painter painting over you. It's just like quite a nice little bit of escalation. And these ones here, it's kind of similar to that technique we saw before where the image was constructed from vertical lines. So it's like an optical illusion. It's everything. You run it through a number of filters in Photoshop and you can kind of tweak the settings so that you get an image that is just created out of like small rectangular or small square cubes. To do that again, it's about 25 hours work. Just a thankless job as well. But you just have to cut out every single square and then another one and then another one, which is not that exciting. But the image itself is it's a bit of a joke. It's Che Guevara. It's Che Guevara's last known photo when he disguised himself as an old man for a passport. He had himself smuggled into Bolivia when he was then captured and killed. It's a bit of a joke because the stencil of Che Guevara is the most reproduced image in the history of all images. There are more photos and copies and prints and stencils of the iconic image of Che than you find anywhere else in this world. The most iconic. So this is probably the least known image of Che Guevara imaginable. It's another stencil, but it's a stencil of him in a kind of form that no one will ever recognise him. And lots of things. I don't know, it's kind of a bit of a beast. This one I quite like, there's a stormtrooper bursting out of someone's crotch down there. The crotch is painted on afterwards, the stormtrooper has been there for ages, but someone decided to paint a figure around it. But it's just all kind of a way of interacting, because different pieces from different eras, the era of cartoon and friendly kind of neutral images that were almost these kind of anti-political statements. Big kind of friendly cartoon characters, half-cut fish, little snakes. All these things that kind of flourished after the 2001 crisis are still captured on this wall somewhere, but the idea is to sort of capture capture the spirit, capture the energy, and capture a piece from every artist, all in one space.